So right now I'm doing a reading on Neil Gorsuch. And Neil Gorsuch is famously the new Supreme Court judge appointed by Trump and heavily favored or pushed by Mitch McConnell. And he's one of those people, there are several of them in the Trump administration, who are so sketchy. You look at them and you think, okay, whoa. He has that very, very cold demeanor. And he just has a very creepy vibe. A lot of people in the administration have a creepy vibe, but he's one of those, right? He's a real, it's hard to explain. It's just, he looks like a American Psycho middle-aged version or something, or what Jared Kushner wants to be when he grows up. Okay. Anyway, so let's get started. Okay. Neil Gorsuch. All right. All right. So Neil Gorsuch. And I'm going to get started in the position number 5, which is the center of the reading, as I've explained before. So we have the Ace of Swords and the key card. And I would think that is coherent with how his appointment has been pushed both by the president and the conservatives as a sort of like a new beginning or a victory, okay? So it's interesting that the key is right there. And what I'm getting as I go on to develop to talk about the cards further, what I get from the key card is that he's very tied to everything that's happening in this administration. Therefore, his central position is related to this symbolic and actual role. So whatever happens to the administration also happens to him. Then that's what I think, okay? So looking at the overall reading, the other card that I'm struck by is position 3. You have Justice upside down and the Whip. So obviously, considering that he's a judge, Justice upside down is not a great card for him, unless we could perhaps think, okay, he's there to turn justice upside down, but it's not quite that, because right above you have position 2, you have the Cross, which is a card of misfortune, karma, and guilt, right, on a kind of a core sense. So I don't believe that it's about him overturning justice, right, or reshaping justice to whatever goal, however they see fit. It's not. It looks like it's not going to work. Okay, so now now that I've gone over the first impressions of the reading, which I think it's important to do that, just so you can get a vibe or a feeling for it, and then you go into the details. Okay, so the first card, we have poverty card, financial difficulties, and then you have a lot of money on top of it. So in a way, this tells me that, I don't know, that maybe he could have been in some financial difficulty and he got a lot of money, and not in return. It's a way to alleviate money problems. But I think ultimately, I don't feel like that's him for some reason. I feel like that's the dichotomy of this administration, right? That's a lot of money. They have a lot of money. And in a way, they have this agenda with poverty. It's almost like their goal is to increase poverty almost, right? I feel like everything they do has to do with making harder for people with less and make it better for them. So that's what I believe. It could be, again, that he was under some sort of financial duress and that he got this money, but and I'll tell you more as the reading progresses. I don't believe that it's about him, because it shows him as involved in being part of a group, okay? So I don't believe it's about him. I do believe he has something to do with the group. And if we look at number 2, just doing the left column, we have Queen of Cups and guilt. So in a way, it's interesting because the Queen of Cups, I don't believe it has to do with being with any one woman. I think has more to do with feminine values and emotions and anything related to spirituality. And oh, this is interesting now that I say this. It could also mean religious because, like I said before, number two can also mean religious. So it could mean that he has something to do with religious, like a religious right or religious money and so forth. But that leads to a lot of infighting and stress. Okay, so either cross as guilt or as religion. It's not. This doesn't look. The left looks particularly bad because you have the whip, which is the card of fighting, aggression, stress. So there's a lot of stress and there's a lot of fighting related to this money and the religious thing and the guilt. I think there's something. Oh, you know what's interesting? Now that I'm looking at it, there was one reading, and I think it was. Oh, it was Betsy DeVos reading. I remember very well that there was this card came up with a cross on top of it, and it was about the right, the religious right, and so forth, and the ironies and the hypocrisy. And I think here it may have something to do with that too. Actually, that now that I think about it, I look at position number one and I think, okay, so it's money is more important. Like money, like religion is used as a cover up for money. Okay, so ultimately, that's what I'm getting. Now it makes a lot more sense. It kind of became crisper. And in a way, I think the number two cross then becomes more, yeah, sort of two faceted, right? It is about religion, but it is about some sort of guilt. There's something sort of dark going on because you have the whip right underneath and you have the justice overturned. So it could be that he really indeed has the goal to use this sort of religious mentality to overturn justice and be aggressive about it. Or, and I think more likely, some sort of legal judgment will be passed against him in some way. Okay, not just him, but the whole enterprise, because you have the whip, and whip is pain, not emotional pain, but pain otherwise, stress and aggression. And I have to remember that how I posed the question was, what is going to happen to Neil Gorsuch after the Mueller investigation? So this isn't really about what has happened in the past or what he might have done. It's in a way it's looking forward. Obviously, you have to read this. The left column a lot of times is about context, but still, it's something that about something that's going to happen. Okay, so we're looking at that. That's just a very ominous card for somebody who's a judge and who is in this position. Okay, so we have that left column, and then looking at the center column, 4, 5, 6. I've discussed 5 before, and if you look at number 4, it's the card of change, small change, in a sense, practical change. It's not the wheel of fortune, but it's the day to day, the 1, 2, 3 of change, handling all the balls in the air, literally. And we have the Lady card, which this is a card about this is one of the many readings about the Mueller investigation. So yes, it represents Russia. So in a way, he's tasked with representing the interests possibly of Russia and big money together. Okay. And then we have underneath the sword and the key, and then right below we have the 5 of Wands and the Crossroads, which is the card that comes up for election. So a lot of fighting regarding the election. So in a way, something that came up just looking at this just now, something that I've been thinking about a lot is the connection between big American money and the Russian interests, because a lot of them, and I think a lot of them are libertarian, quote unquote, and what I understand that to mean is to be anti-government and to want as little government interference as possible. So when you look at that, it makes sense because they see the number 1 is right next to 4, and number 1 is the big money, right? And number 4 is Russia. So they are aligned. And if we look at number 7, we have the plans upside down. It's turning, right, the plans to turn the world upside down in a way. And we have the anchor. So it shows me that, and I've said this before, anchor can mean many things. It can mean time. It's really, when you look at an anchor, what does it really mean, right? It means time, it means stability. It also means a job. It means it must be anchored in something. So what is he anchored in? He's anchored in the money that's influenced by Russia, from Russia, but is connected. Okay, so this is, I think, significant. It tells me something that I already wanted to know about, not necessarily about him, but the whole thing with money and Russia and Americans and Russia and so forth. Okay, so again, it shows that he is the key. If we look at 5 again, key and like Russia and the details. So it's almost as if he's tasked with dealing with the details of transforming the values for this new world or new reality they want to create. But he encounters problems, okay, and I think they could be related to the election, yes, because then I'll talk about another card that is right next to the election card. But I think it could also be as a choice. But I think ultimately, again, he's seen as a key figure to change the justice system in some way related to this new election, these changes, and so forth. And then if we look at the last column, 7, 8, 9, we have, like I said, the 2 of Wands, which is plans upside down. So the plans to turn the world upside down in some way, okay, executing these plans. But if it's upside down, it could mean both that they want to do it or that they want to undo something or that they were not able to do it. So in the end, even though he is the anchor for these values, I don't think he's able to do that. And then underneath, we have the sun upside down and the moon. And that's an interesting combination because the sun is about illuminating and showing something. So, and then we have the reputation. So in a way, his reputation is obfuscated. There's something about his reputation that is not clear, but it affects him, right? So his reputation, and we have to remember the card of reputation is also essentially means how the world sees you. So when they think of this person, what do we think of him? So he is a judge, but also his reputation is very much tied to all these things we've discussed. So that's what it's reminding me of. So because there's an anchor to the reputation is created through all these elements. And then the reputation, the moon is right above the house, which obviously we think of as the White House. So there's a messages from the White House. Okay, so what I think it means is that whatever happens to him, because the question was what happens to him after the after the Mueller investigation, and what it's saying here is, well, it depends on what happens to the White House, and whatever happens to the White House happens to him. Okay, so if we look at just the Norman storylines, we have anchor, moon, reputation that is tied to whatever he does, his role connecting these groups, and the reputation is gained through the White House. Okay, so it's just this confirmation. And looking at the column storyline, the second one, he's a key to the Russian. He's an important person in the Russian values saying, and he's there because of the election or somehow related to this election. Okay. And then the first one, it's guilt related to money or religious money that causes a lot of pain, a lot of stress, a lot of fighting, okay? And then if we look at the 147, which is the first row, we have fish, the lady, and anchor. And again, I think I've talked about this just now. That just means Russian money that's Russian influenced. He's the anchor for the money that's Russian influence. So that's his job. And then 2, 5, and 8, second row, he's the key to, in a way, could be a religious reputation or guilty reputation, okay? And then the last one, 3, 6, 9, stress related to the election brought by the White House, related to the White House. So if we look at what this is supposed to mean in terms of the spread itself, the top is supposed to mean what's on his mind or what he's aware of. He knows that that's his job, that he has a job. His job is to really implement these values or these choices. But what's on like his subconscious, what worries him perhaps, is the painful consequences. And if you look at the justice upside down, the painful consequences if the law goes against the re-election results and how that's going to impact the White House. And he knows that he is a key, right, to that, to those values, and whatever happens, his reputation is tied to that. So that's what it's saying. Okay, it's not. Yeah, I don't think. I don't believe. If we look at what has happened, if we looked at all the readings, right, I don't think he's going to stay. If this administration leaves, I believe he's going along with this administration, because I don't see the plan succeeding here. Okay, I don't see. Yeah, I see the problems with the election. I see it's just saying one thing that is important to remember, that I always remind myself of when I look at Lenormand, is that it's not about feelings or what could be, or it's not about potential, it's about reality, right? So whatever the cards tell you, the cards are saying this is what's going to happen the day to day. It's not going to say, oh, something bad comes along and it's a weird vibe, because the tarot has more flexibility, but the Lenormand doesn't have. So when I think of that, then it really tells me that, in a way, he's just a person that's in this environment. Okay, we obviously he has an important role, but whatever happens in the White House happens to him too. So in a way, it's not that he's a mind. He is important to their goals, but in a way, he's a minder person, because he's just a soldier. That's what I'm getting. Okay, he's a soldier to the value system, and I think he knows it, right, and he played it well. So that's the story. All right, and that's that. So that's the deal with Neil Gorsuch. I don't believe he will stay, and I believe whatever happens to the administration happens to him as well, and he's aware of it. All right? Okay, thanks for watching.